everyone. My name is Halima Siddiqui, and I'm the project coordinator at Health Nexus. Health Nexus oversees several provincial initiatives related to FASD. The FASD provincial website, where you can find recent and up-to-date information about what's happening, learn more about resources and tools, and find out services available in your local community. We also allocate subsidies every year to 40+ support groups for individuals with FASD and their families. And we designed an online training for service providers from various sectors, including healthcare and nursing, education, mental health and addictions, justice and corrections, and community and social work. I'd like to begin with a land acknowledgement. Before we start the presentation, we would like to begin by acknowledging the Indigenous people of all the lands that we are on today. While we meet today on a virtual platform, let's take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the lands which we each call home. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and to improving our own understanding of local Indigenous people and their cultures. From coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people that call this land home. Please join me in a moment of reflection to acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past and to consider how we can each, in our own way, try to move forward in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. A couple of house rules before we begin the presentation. You may be tempted to ask questions at the end about yourself or loved ones with FASD. Please do not use any identifying information to protect people's privacy. By law, we have a duty to report to Children Aid Society or the police any threat to a child or direct attempt to harm yourself or someone else. Presenters cannot provide clinical advice, as this would require professional counseling and more in-depth knowledge of the situation and behaviors at stake. Today's discussion provides information about latest research, evidence-based practice, or general education tips and advice. If you need ongoing support, please consider connecting with your local FASD worker for supports or join one of our Health Nexus support groups for individuals with FASD and their families. You can find this information on our website, fasdinfo.tsaf.ca. Okay, I would like to introduce our speaker today, Reinier. Reinier knew something was wrong from the time he learned to walk. He felt different from others, and others constantly would reinforce that message over the next 50 or so years. Then at 56 years old, Reinier received a diagnosis that he was on the FASD spectrum. His brain's development in the womb had been corrupted by alcohol. His brain was indeed different. This information set him free to finally be himself. We are thrilled to listen to his presentation. Please ask your questions in the Q&A, and I'll provide more information and links in the chat. And with that, I will pass it on to our FASD consultant, Nancy Lockwood, who will be interviewing Reinier today and facilitating the conversation.
Welcome, Reinier. So nice to see you.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I know you've already had a very busy day. We were talking before we came on here, so we're very impressed you're here, very grateful. And before we get started too, I just want to mention that many of us already know that you're a very positive, happy sort of person. But as we've discussed today, we're going to have a really frank conversation about your journey with FASD, the good and the not so good. So I really thank you in advance for being so frank and honest. Also, for those who don't know, Reinier is a valued member of the FASD Advisory Committee for Health Nexus, so we thank you for that as well. And to get started, my first question for you, it's going to be an interview format today, is in general, what was your childhood like, Reinier?
Well, thanks for the nice introduction, Nancy. My childhood was kind of, my perspective versus what I'm told is two slightly different things. I mean, I grew up in a nice little town in middle Ontario. Near Niagara Falls, a really great community to grow up in and everything. My parents were, pretty good 60s parents. Um, but it was always had an underpinning of discomfort, anxiety, and what am I going to get in trouble for next? Kind of just always being on my shoulder, whispering in my ear constantly. So my childhood was good. There was no abuse. My parents were good folks and everything, but I always felt like the world was made out of eggshells.
Interesting. And what about school? What was your school experience?
School was this brilliant device created by some hideous person to magnify everything I just said, and really magnify it. I think because school was designed, of course, at least at that time, to get you in line, get your ducks in a row, get everything sorted out, get you ready for the big machine, I guess you could say. And I wasn't very malleable clay to be manufactured into what the school system wanted, and it was rough. It was not a fun part of my memories of being young.
Hmm. Now, in your bio, it mentioned that you received your diagnosis at age 56. What
Correct.
led you to seek getting an assessment for FASD?
Well, one thing that saved my butt through my younger life was I ended up being a creative. So I was a photographer, I was a musician, and a few other things like that. And that kind of gave you a bit of license back then to be a little off the middle path. And long story, much shorter is by the time I was around 56 or so, I had a successful business of my own, self-employed and doing multimedia. So part of that is shooting video, interviews, editing it, and Dr. James Reynolds over at the time, it was called NeuroDevNet, the kids' brain health folks. He hired me to edit a bunch of videos that one of his folks had shot. And part of the challenge there was that I'm busy editing all this stuff, and people are being interviewed that are experts in FASD and everything. And I'm going, gosh, I feel like I'm editing my own life. It was just a very
Amazing.
strange deja vu kind of feeling. And the producer, an excellent Sue Kobus, an excellent person, kind of at the time she was working for Queen's University, and she said, "Let's talk a little bit." And there's just so many things lining up. It kind of came down to maybe we should see if we can find out more. It led to a very long process, but eventually the diagnosis, every piece just kind of clicked in over the next couple of years. And yeah, at 56 years old, um, the paperwork was complete and I was officially a fastling.
That's amazing. We're going to talk about those videos a little bit further on, but even just with the diagnosis piece, can you share what some of your feelings were when you received the diagnosis?
Well, an important part I think I'd like everybody to know, and I suspect any, post post teenager FASD person who's not been diagnosed but is about to will go through a similar thing, which is when you get the diagnosis, it ends an awful lot of the what the hell is wrong with me monster that also rides on the other shoulder and is always whispering in your head like what the heck's wrong with you. And I'm being polite with my wording here, this is a
Mhm.
family show, but it's a strong, intense voice. It's not pleasant, and it goes, what the hell is wrong with you? It was echoed back by my parents and a lot of other people and teachers. So the diagnosis was kind of like this, here's the answer finally after 56 years. Oh, I'm on the FASD spectrum. And it was a key item that dropped into my life, not as a curse or not as a horrid piece of news, but it's kind of like when you ask about the weather, is it raining out? Yes, it's raining out. Oh, well, I don't necessarily like rain, but now I can get an umbrella. I can wear my rubber shoes. I can now move through my life prepared for what is actually so. So,
Ah, that's a really good analogy. I really like that. It's, yeah, once you know what you're dealing with, then you can come up with a plan. Right.
yes, and you also don't feel it can really shred the victim position, that you can get into even with a diagnosis if you're not careful. You can blame your diagnosis or what's wrong, again, quotes, wrong with you. But just my approach has been, this is not what's right or wrong about me. This is me. So now let's move on with this new data that I understand. In this case, literally the machine that's me, the body that is me, not my mind, not my spirit, but my body. It had some wiring alterations, unscheduled, but they are here.
And you've been so open with talking about having FASD, why has it been important to you to share your journey with other people?
There were times I didn't want to be here before diagnosis. There were times where it was really hard to keep going. And I know, I mean, the blunt word is suicide. And um, I always had enough optimism that I never ever moved into any physical action, but the idea and concept was present. And even just anybody getting to the point where they even just kind of wonder about it, they're not in a great place,
No.
and it's a real shame that any human being would have to feel some of the stuff that I felt. And so one of the first things that happened when I got my late life diagnosis was I wish I had a time machine so I could zip back to my 16-year-old, because there was just a lot of crappy years in there where I'm just going, why am I even bothering? This is not fun. I'm
Mhm.
not going to fit in. I'm not going to line up with, I'm never going to be comfortable. And it's a horrible feeling. So part of my wanting to, advocate and speak up a bit here is to hopefully give a little hope to people much earlier on in the spectrum, young adults that kind of, they want to know, am I screwed now? I can look them in the eye and say, you're not. Here, let me show you some of the stuff I've done. It's really amazing. So hope is a word I'm careful with, but if I can give a person on the spectrum hope, if I can give someone's caregivers, because they aren't understanding their person they're looking after, if I can give them hope, any hope is good in this world. So
Absolutely. And what difference do you think it would have made if you had a diagnosis earlier in life, when you were a child or a youth? What do you think the difference could have been?
wow. I think it would have removed an immense amount of anxiety and lack of confidence building. Lack of confidence building is what I didn't have confidence building. I had the opposite. It would have removed a lot of that, and I think perhaps I hate to say be more successful, because I mean I'm okay. I mean, as you know, and some of my friends know, this year I bought a house. I'm 65 this year, and I bought my first house in my lifetime with my partner, Kate. And maybe that would have happened a decade or two earlier, and I kind of wish it did. I
Yeah.
kind of wish, because it's hard right now, and we'll get into some of the physical aspects of things, but um, I think anything that helps someone adjust course to their actual reality in life, the sooner the better.
Hmm.
Life isn't easy. It's not always horrible, but Mr. Buddha had the line, life, there's suffering in life, and that's kind of guaranteed. And what you do with it is up to us. And so I think understanding what was, how that there was a stone in my shoe, I'm not going to get it out, and I'm going to have to figure out how to walk in a way that's the most comfortable I can with that situation. So that, I think an early diagnosis allows one to get to the real story faster than all the, because it does, I have to admit, before the diagnosis a lot of stories get made up in your head about why you're experiencing life this way. That's
Right.
where the bad voices come in, because our mind is not our friend a lot of the times, and it just looks for any explanation, even if it makes you look like a turd. Oh, well, this
Um,
is your turd, Rainier, and yeah, it's an easy answer, but it's not true, it's not accurate.
no,
But we can start believing our minds if we're not careful. So,
exactly. Now, you mentioned those wonderful videos you did for NeuroDevNet, which is now
mhm.
Kids Brain Health Network. And in those videos, so for those who haven't seen them, Halima's going to pop the links into the chat, and I highly suggest you watch them. I saw them well before I ever met you. And your mom, your bio mom, is in them. So you were raised by your bio mom. I'm also going to say you and I are pretty much the same age. We're children of the 60s. Rules
Yeah,
about drinking were different. People
yeah,
didn't know about the risks of prenatal alcohol exposure,
not at all.
smoking, all those things. Um, in the videos, it's very clear that you had a beautiful relationship with your mom. When you got your diagnosis, how did it affect your relationship?
Well, this is one thing I keep mentioning. One thing I really have to say is I never have, never will advocate for any shaming of moms around FASD. But with my mom, the interesting thing was how much relief it gave her.
Huh.
And that was something a lot of people don't understand because she also had what the hell's wrong with Junior? And not bad or good, and she was loving as best they could. I understand that now very well. But she's also going, what is going wrong here? Which also explains some of their behavior when they're trying to bring me up, because they were trying to correct for something that was not correctable. So really bad news for everybody involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my mom um was very remorseful. I really let her know that there was zero blame from me. But this is why it went the way it went. And it kind of like any good therapy, a lot of it's getting rid of the junk that we carry. And it got allowed my mother and I to get rid of an awful lot of junk between us.
Mm.
And the last week of her life, I held her hand and I was the only one at her bedside. And I get so sad when I think if we hadn't had that clearing, that might not have
Yeah.
happened. So again, back to knowing your true state and what you're dealing with is so important.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. Um, I'm also curious how FASD is affecting your life at this age. Can you describe some ways it is, if it still is, affecting you?
Well, one thing I have to say right off the bat, um, there's confusion in here for me in the sense that I understand a little better now that apparently, we can say age is a number and all that stuff until we go blue in the face and drop dead or something ironic like that. But actually, um, our bodies get old. Huh, big surprise. And you can meditate and do everything you want and pray as much as you want, but your body's going to go. It'll stop sometime. So part of my challenge with this, Nancy, is kind of discerning what is just getting old. Like arthritis. I've got arthritis, but I've had chronic fibromyalgia diagnosed twice in my life now for like almost over 30 years.
Interesting.
And it's hard. Is that the arthritis or is that the fibromyalgia? And gosh,
Mm,
that hurts a lot. Is that amplified arthritis because of the fibromyalgia? Which I highly suspect fibromyalgia is probably one of the offshoots of the wiring issues with the FASD. Like I'm really sensitive, and that's a gift I've got, and it's a curse,
yeah.
depending upon the day and how it comes in.
And the research is showing, well, first of all, we know that FASD is a whole body disorder, so it can be
Yeah,
affecting, all sorts of systems and organs in the body. But
yeah.
there is research showing that people's bodies are aging faster when they
Mm.
have FASD with things like early arthritis. Did you start getting arthritis at what you think is a younger age than average?
Well, as I said, the fibromyalgia, which is a tricky diagnosis at the best of
Yes, it
times,
is.
um, especially as an example, if you get a tick bite, all the symptoms of a tick bite is fibromyalgia. So it's like
Mhm.
there's confusion with some of these things. Um,
Yeah.
but I would say I've always felt I've always felt pain, irritation. So, example, mosquitoes are just a nightmare for me. One bite just can just drive me crazy for like 4 or 5 days. It feels like my whole arm is on fire and that. Um, so I again, I feel that life is it gives and it gives. There's a cost on every gift. Like there's
Mhm.
nobody gets out of getting a great benefit without some kind of hidden, the shadow side of everything is there. And so I've been a great musician. Wrote some great music. I'm a great poet, I think. And one of these days I'll show the world that by publishing. But the point is, I feel these sensitivities are great, but the cost is that I'm sensitive. And,
Yeah.
there's times when, my buddies used to give me the old shoulder punch, boom. And I'd like just go white. the pain, it would just go bam, like an explosion. And oh, you, of course, boys being boys, oh, you sissy, and they just keep at it, And
Mhm.
now I understand better. I'm wired to when something hits 10 for normal people, it's hitting 60 to 80 for me.
What about relationships? You mentioned earlier your
Yeah.
love for dates.
Well, I guess it's a similar
Homeowner.
curve, I think. Yeah. My wife, my partner Kate, is really looking to see if there's some way to form a group that's just people who are on the spectrum or have life partners because it's challenging in the sense I've been in a few relationships in my lifetime, committed ones, and I've had many friends who have been in them, and I know a lot about them from inside them and outside them. They're challenging. If they're not challenging, you're probably not in a proper relationship. Part of the challenge is where do you go when something goes wrong? Where do you go for blaming the situation? Do you beat yourself up? Do you beat up your partner like mentally? Do you make them the victim or the aggressor or you? And I find FASD confuses that a bit, a lot, a lot. Because there's times where I'll just be being me and I'm being creative and I think this is brilliant. And Kate will go, oh, and it didn't work. And she's like, maybe that's the FASD. And that's tr-
Interesting.
and that's really tricky because and it's good in one sense. I can stop and think, yeah, am I not managing well here? I spend a lot of energy managing where I am in life, energetically, socially, all that. Yet the problem is because I come from a background of self-doubt, it's really hard because sometimes in a relationship, the guy is right. And it's hard for me to push back when I know this is me.
Yeah.
Because I'm going, this is me, and it's always got a question mark on it it's built in. So, trying to find that authentic position with my partner can be tricky sometimes for both of us. She's also creative. She's also got a lot going on too. It's a busy thing to be in a relationship and kind of constantly be doing personal growth work, literally, just to
What are
manage.
the what are the best parts of your life today? You have a new home.
New
What would
home
you
is amazing.
Yeah, what would you say are the best parts today?
So one thing I have a I do have a very strong sense of who I am, and that shows up in my ability to be creative, whether I'm writing music or shooting a video or doing photography. It allows me to, it sounds weird, but relate to the playful side of myself
Mhm.
very adultly, very much from an adult perspective. I can really enjoy my inner child and also be the kid or the adult in the room at the same time.
That's a
Yeah.
gift.
Thank you. And it takes a bit of work. I've known some of my friends, they have no problem with their inner child, but there's no adult in the room and it's a mess.
Yes. Okay.
So for me, that's my joy and my ability to express myself, um, is just a very light that keeps me going. And that is not just verbally, like I'm doing my best to do here, but also in my art. Um, I just the fact that I'm walking around, Nancy, um, I've got a couple good friends and they didn't make it, and that breaks my heart. Um, and so what I'm doing is trying to find those things that work and not amplify them, but make sure that they have really solid roots. So when I do goes into that point of self-doubt, which I suspect I'll have until I'm dead, but that they're anchored so that they can weather my own storm. I'm getting better at other people's storms coming at me, but I still have a lot inside that I have to
Mm.
contend with too. So the good things in life is those parts where I already know what's anchored solidly. So again, my art, my ability to love, my ability to be a good person to others. It's anchored. You can't shake that. I can't even shake it.
Well, it's very evident. One final question, and then we'll see if there are questions from the viewers. But
Perfect.
what advice would you give to an adult who is wondering whether they should pursue an assessment for FASD?
Oof. As you know, we didn't rehearse these questions, so that's funny how that one just goes in this moment. I think if someone is thinking about looking for an assessment, if they think they might be on the spectrum, I
Mhm.
think you have to go ahead because just in the thought indicates you're feeling off kilter from whatever the world calls normal. And again, I keep saying it's a hard world to move through, even when you're feeling confidently normal. And so, if a person is doubting their their a their neurotypicalness, if they're doubting that they are moving through life with ease and normally, then whatever support they can find for themselves is, I think, very important. And on the FASD, if you have a lot, if you're checking off a bunch of the on the checklist, to do that and not find out professionally, like from a handful of professionals that sit you down and go, yeah, then I think it's dangerous. It's dangerous because if we start self-diagnosing, I know a few friends have done that too, and it just they're off the mark, and that means everything's off the mark in their life. So I think getting a proper diagnosis when a person feels like, yeah, I think this might be me, I think that's really good to again find the truth as best you can.
Thank you so much, Reinier. That
Mm.
I still am thinking about your answer to the question about what drew you to seek an assessment. And honestly, that is such an amazing story that you were editing videos about FASD. It really, that is amazing. But at this point, I'm going to
Yeah,
ask Halima to join us and let us know if there are any questions for Reinier in the chat.
sure. Thank you.
What would you say to someone who worries that getting a diagnosis of FASD will be getting a label?
That's a great question, whoever asked that one. Well, you will be getting a label. And I promise you, you've already got a handful of them on you already that you've probably put there, and your family and clergy and government, and everybody's already put them on you. So uh, the thing is, I would say to that person, you get to decide what to do with that label. It will be your label, and you can decide to ignore it or use it as a keystone into deeper information about who you are. But my point is, you will have better knowledge of how you're built, of how you're wired. And if you really care about yourself, and I pray you do, you will then have better tools to look after yourself better and better tools to ask for help to help you as you move through life. And if the label is FASD, fine. If it's fast food, chicken fried, whatever, it doesn't matter what the label is. But this is a label, if that's because you will get a diagnosis. It's kind of what it is. It's a label, but it's your label. You decide what you're going to do with it.
Thank you, Rainier. Next question. I heard you recently moved from Ontario to the East Coast. How does it compare to Ontario in terms of knowledge and supports for FASD?
That is a wonderful question. Like many things out here, I'm in Nova Scotia. I've been here for a couple years now. Um, the good news is, or I should say, the bad news out here is kind of backwards. The good news is it's kind of backwards. And by that I mean things move slower here. It's a slower pace. But the good news is people still talk to one another just because they bumped into each other on the street and they don't know each other. And what you do as humans is say, "Hey, hi, how you doing?" So I find it's much more open out here. FASD is just coming into things here. There's a wonderful organization, FANS, FANS, Fetal Alcohol Nova Scotia. A guy named Alan, and I'll get his last name wrong, but he's in charge of that, and another woman as well. and they're really working hard at getting people to understand it better out here. Um, it's not
Mountford?
like Ontario. It's not, there's only one organization out here, and that's it right now. So I'm just joining, helping them out too. We're just literally starting in the new year. So there's work to be done here.
Thank you. Rainier and Nancy, perhaps the both of you can tag team this next question, just because I don't know if this question is for us or for individually for Rainier, but someone asked, where can someone go to get an FASD diagnosis as an adult?
Hmm. You
Okay,
want
I'm
me
gonna
to
let
take
Nancy
it?
field this one. This is a tricky one because you may have to.
It is
I,
a
I want
trick.
to say this. I want to say this first, Nancy. I'm gonna let you rock on it, but you may have to lean into this a bit. We've been so busy, and it's not wrong. We've been leaning into kids, helping young people. Okay, adults are back of the curve right now, but it's happening more and more. So you may need to lean into it and chase this a bit. That being said, Nancy.
Oh, thanks. That is a very tricky question. I'm assuming that the person asking the question's in Ontario. So actually on the Health Nexus website, FASDinfo, TSAF.ca, we do have a list of all the diagnostic clinics in Ontario, the publicly funded ones, but they don't all see adults. So you may have to travel. It's even here in Ottawa, for example, we have a diagnostic clinic at the Children's Hospital and they do see adults. But for children and youth, it's a multidisciplinary assessment. We've got neuropsychologists and speech language pathologists, etc. But if you're an adult, you may have to go and get all those assessments done on your own. There may be costs involved. So it's going to really depend where you live. And so the honest answer is that can be a barrier. You may need to travel. It may or may not all be covered. You may have to put some funds up front. So, I think that's an area we can do better and we need more advocacy.
Amen. I'd like to add too, there's that old saying, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. And the trick, here's my advocacy on this particular point. Be a loving, self-caring squeaky wheel, and you'll get the oil faster. I think that's really important. I found that I quickly got the people helping me to understand I'm not doing this to look for a get out of jail free card, or so I can now be another victim with a disability. I, so that helped people want to help me. So that's just a tip I'll say is be a loving, caring squeaky wheel, and that will help as well.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you to the both of you. Next question. Someone commented, great presentation. Do you feel much stigma from people, even if they don't know you have FASD, but because you might present a little differently?
So full disclosure, this has been an issue in my relationship with my partner. Is it's kind of like, how soon do you tell someone, oh, by the way, I'm on the FASD spectrum? And the interesting thing I've noticed is I've taken as much responsibility for my life and my behavior as I possibly can. I don't know how to do it better right now. And there's always room for improvement, but I'm feeling good about it. Um, there is this place where the stigma kind of comes in when I'm not owning who I am. If I own who I am, then this label, again, there's the label, FASD, it's applied to me. I'm taking responsibility as a human being on the FASD spectrum. And we've talked about this before. FASD is not the person. And there's still some of us still learning that that's true and experimenting with understanding that. And so people do like to understand why creative people do what they do. It's why every old DVD had how the movie was made, because we're curious. How did they do that? And I think people on the FESD spectrum, there's some wonderful people like Miles and RJ Formanek. They're amazingly neat people, and you want to know, how do they tick? So I think the trick is to take the stigma and turn it around on itself. Um, I don't know if this makes sense. I hope it does. But I can't worry about what people are thinking about me past the regular compassionate way I should think about how people are thinking about. How am I behaving? I want people to not think I'm a jerk and want to move away from me. So I do care what they're thinking, but I can't do anything about it except be the best me I can in that relationship in the moment with them. So again, stigma can pop up, but again, it's a label, and you decide how you. I own my stigma or the stigma about me, if that makes sense. Um, but I can't change anybody else's ideas except by example of who I am. And maybe their definition of their label of, in this case, FASD, will shift a bit. Their idea and their approach to their stigma around it will shift a bit. I hope that helps a bit.
Thank you, Reinier. Next and last question. Do you have any advice to help a young adult who's newly diagnosed come to terms with the diagnosis without shaming the birthing parent? For an example, the initial anger that one may feel.
Ah. Oh, well, I think the first thing about not shaming your birth parent is just don't do it. It's hard. You make a choice. I'm not going to do it. Because you can find our mind, again, back to our minds. Our minds can find lots of reasons to be pissed off at somebody, and being annoyed at our parents is super easy, the best of times. So I'm just saying is you have to look after you. In doing that, then you can decide how to better look after your relationship with your parents. But a choice you can make right now is to go, what happened, happened. This is me. I've got some info about me now. I'm going to work on me. And I'm going to choose not to go out and find someone to blame for this. And it's not easy. I'm not suggesting an easy thing. I'm suggesting an enlightened way to be. And you'll probably fail at it, like I have many times. You will fail, but that's the idea. You keep coming back to, no, I'm blaming them. I'll just stop doing that. Because it will not change anything about who you are on this spectrum. Finding someone to blame will not change anything ever. You'll feel good for a second, maybe, but it won't change anything. You'll be you in the morning again. So, anyway, that's my advice to that. Just find a way to not do it.
Thank you so much, Rainier. This has been such a wonderful and very enlightening presentation. I think everyone over here enjoyed. We have positive messages coming in
Oh,
for
great.
sharing personal stories with us. So thank you to you and for this
You're
wonderful
welcome.
presentation. And thank you for our participants from listening from across the
Yep.
province.
Thank you, guys. Be good to each other out there, please, and thank you.